On February 24, 1978, 5 friends left a Chico basketball game and vanished. Days later, their Mercury still started in mountain snow. Why did they walk away from it? Jack Madruga, Bill Sterling, Jack Hewitt, Ted Weiher, and Gary Mathias lived with their parents in Yuba City and Marysville. Families called them the boys, for had intellectual disabilities or were described as slow learners. Mathias, 25, had been discharged from the Army with schizophrenia and by 1978 was an outpatient on trifluoperazine and benzatropine, a case his doctors called a success. They played basketball as the Gateway Gators. On February 24th, they drove 50 miles to Chico State to watch UC Davis play, then planned to sleep and wake for a Special Olympics tournament that offered a week in Los Angeles. Uniforms were laid out. Parents were asked for wake-up calls. The night was supposed to be a round trip. After Davis won, they went to Bears Market in downtown Chico. It was close to closing, about 10 p.m. The clerk remembered a large group delaying her shutdown. They bought snacks, sodas, and milk. Wrappers from that stop were later found in the Mercury with game programs and a folded California map. That is the last place a stranger could place all 5 together in town. From there, the expected drive was south toward Yuba County. The car was not found on that highway. It was found days later on a high dirt road in Plumas National Forest, tens of miles off any reasonable route home, at about 4,400 feet, near the winter snow line. A ranger had seen the Montego on February 25th and thought little of it. On the 28th, after the missing bulletin, he led deputies to it. Empty snack wrappers were inside. The keys were not. The car was unlocked, a window down, which Madruga's family said was unlike him. Officers hot-wired the engine. It started. About a quarter tank remained. Snow around the tires was not deep. 5 men should have been able to push it. The undercarriage had no gouges or mud scrapes on a road full of ruts, as if the driver knew the track or took it with unusual care. Madruga, his family said, did not like mountains and would not have handed the wheel to someone else. Joseph Shans of Sacramento had driven up to check snow before a ski weekend and gotten stuck about 150 feet from where the Mercury would be found. He felt a heart attack coming and stayed in his car with the engine on for heat. Hours later, he saw headlights and figures, one of whom he thought might be holding a baby. He called for help. The voices stopped and the lights died. Later, he saw flashlights that also went out when he shouted. In the morning, he walked miles to a lodge. Doctors confirmed a mild heart attack. Weiher's mother said ignoring a plea for help was not like her son. If those figures were the 5, they chose silence over a man in pain. On June 4th, after the high snow melted, motorcyclists reached a Forest Service trailer about 19.4 miles from the Mercury. A front window was broken. Inside they found Ted Weiher. He had been alive long enough for a beard to grow, roughly 3 months from his last shave. He had lost nearly half of a 200-pound frame. His feet were frostbitten toward gangrene. He lay on a bed wrapped in sheets, wallet and a ring engraved Ted on the table. A candle burned down. A gold watch that was not his sat there too. Searchers then found Madruga and Sterling as remains 11.4 miles from the car, and Hewitt near the trailer. Hypothermia took the 3 on the road. Weiher had lasted into spring and then starved. The trailer should have saved them. Matches and paperback novels could have started the fireplace. Heavy forestry clothing stayed in storage. Outside, a shed held sea rations. About 3 dozen cans had been opened. Another locker in the same shed held dehydrated food enough, investigators said, to feed all 5 for a year. it was never opened. A nearby tank of butane would have run the heat if someone had turned the valve. Weiher's family said he lacked practical judgment. He had once stayed in bed during a house fire because he did not want to be late for work. Someone else had likely been with him. The sheets over his body and the military can opener on the serrations point that way. Gary Mathias's tennis sneakers were inside the trailer. Weiher's shoes were not. Investigators thought Mathias, feet swollen, may have taken Weiher's footwear and left. Only Mathias or Madruga, both Army veterans, were known to be familiar with a P-38 can opener. Mathias had not taken his medication with him. His photo went to psychiatric hospitals across California. No admission matched. A woman in Brownsville, 30 miles beyond the car if they had kept driving, later said 4 of the men came into a store on February 25th in a red pickup. Police called her credible. That sighting, if true, does not explain the trailer or the missing 5th man. Mathias has never been found. Police later learned Mathias had friends in Forbestown. A wrong turn near Oroville could put a night driver onto the mountain road. The day before, a Forest Service snowcat had run that way to keep the trailer roof from collapsing, cutting a track through 4 to 6 feet of snow. Following those ruts could feel like following help. That is a navigation story. It sits beside Shanza's lights, the missing keys, the unscratched undercarriage, and a store sighting in another vehicle. Foul play was suspected from the start because the car was so far off route. The bodies did not name a killer. They named a walk that should not have been necessary. Blankets and a rusted flashlight turned up a quarter-mile from the trailer. Nobody could date those objects to the night of February 24th. Search storms in February had already beaten the first teams back, and 2 days later snowcats nearly lost the searchers themselves. By June the mountain had rearranged clothing, bone, and snowmelt around 4 identified dead. One absence is not a theory. Mathias remains the open name on every flyer. Families still had a tournament they never reached, and a Mercury that would have driven them home if someone had turned the key that was no longer in the ignition. The public file is often nicknamed an American Dyatlov story. The comparison is atmosphere, not evidence. What the record actually holds is a working Mercury, a witness whose shouts went unanswered, a trailer full of unused survival gear, and a man whose shoes were there when he was not. No arrest closed it. No later year produced Mathias in a hospital, a jail, or a grave. The Special Olympics tournament they had laid clothes out for went on in Yuba County without the Gateway Gators who had asked to be woken on time. 5 friends watched a game in Chico, bought milk at Bears Market, and never made the drive home to Yuba County. 4 were found where a working car was not. 1 was not found at all. The trailer had canned food and a year's dehydrated stores. The tank had butane. The engine had gasoline. Mathias's shoes were indoors when Mathias was not. This case stays open on that contradiction, not on folklore. If you want the next file built the same way, documents first, and no invented ending, stay with that rule. Subscribe if you want the next case broken down the same way.